Welcome to another episode of the Gaming Kitchen. So in this episode, I'm going to take a look at the new Star Wars DLC that just dropped this week. Now, I made another video, which was an impression video about this, and I was excited. To be honest with you, I think you can't have a Star Wars game without space. And as soon as I saw this trailer at Star Wars Celebration online, I knew that Battlefront was heading in the right direction. I feel like so far, out of the 3 DLCs that has been released, Death Star has been the most anticipated. Outer Rim was kind of okay received by the fan community. Didn't really like the heroes that were released. Bespin was a sign that showed that they were heading in the right direction. And Death Star is the one that just hit it out the park. There's still some improvements that need to be done in this game. But I think that the game that you're playing now, September 21st or September 23rd, all the way down to December 2016 and beyond, is an entirely different game than what it was when it came out in November of 2015. So you have to approach this game differently than your approach or your point of view or your opinion was, say, almost a year ago. I had to change my opinion a couple of times, especially after the Bespin DLC. I feel like they were listening to the fan community and DICE was starting to do what needed to be done. So, with that being said, here's what I think about the Death Star DLC. Just as the Bespin DLC proved significantly that DICE was heading in the right direction, it's safe to say that Death Star is essentially DICE and EA telling the fans that they listen to them. Now, you're going to have some people out there who are not going to be satisfied with this Battlefront. It's just not going to happen. It's not the original Battlefront. They made it known that it's not the original Battlefront. However, with that being said, you can't deny the fact that DICE has gone out of their way in this DLC, including a patch, to make this game enjoyable, to make it full than what it was when it came out in November. If you followed the Reddit forums, if you've been on the EA forums, you realize the amount of change that has gone through with this game. From being criticized for being a bare bone game, you only had a few modes that was out when it came out. So DICE had a chance to redeem themselves. EA has a chance to redeem themselves with the Star Wars community. Now, this isn't just the only Battlefront that's coming out. You have multiple Battlefronts that are coming out bi-yearly. So I think the way it's going to go is you're going to have a Battlefield, you're going to have a Battlefront, and you have a Battlefield and a Battlefront, so on and so on. Because Battlefield 1's coming out this year. So you have a bi-yearly product. And it's a popular product. You have a product which Star Wars fans are clinging to. It is wise on their part to start telling the community that they believe that they're meeting them halfway. And I think the Star Wars DLC this time around is symbolically telling fans that. Now, this video is not to say that, they did everything perfect or this is it. Like, this is the definition, because as I said before, you're going to have people out there who just are not going to be happy. Whether it be their anger is at EA, or it's going to be at the way they did Battlefront, or the fact that they contributed this Death Star DLC as paid DLC with a season pass. But one thing you can't ignore is the significant change that they did during this game. Every time DLC drops, it's a different game. They've gone back, they've reworked things, they've nerfed things, they've fixed the structure of what doesn't work in order to make it somewhat workable in the present time. So, when looking at the Death Star DLC, you have 3 stages. You have the diversion, you have the rescue mission, and then you have the iconic trench run. So you have 3 modes, which is called Battle Station. A Battle Station consists of those 3 modes which I just mentioned, and it's not a long amount of time. It's not a short amount of time. It's just right enough in order for people to grasp what they have to do, the objectives in which they have to achieve, and everything in order to blow up the Death Star. If the rebellion fails on each level, they're not able to move to the next stage. So, prior to Death Star, there were 0 space battles in this game. As mentioned on their official Facebook as well as forums, they said that they were going to focus on the planets, the scenery, air combat, and things such as that. The problem with that train of thought is the fact that Star Wars, for the most part, is in space. If you have a game that is Star Wars and the game is not set in space, it's not a Star Wars game. I think the only Star Wars game that could at least get away with it was Star Wars Racer, Episode 1 Racer. Other than that, you need space. So, this DLC expands in a great way by introducing space battles, which is one of the things that made Battlefront 2 on the Xbox and PlayStation 2. It was PlayStation 2 or PlayStation Xbox. I think it was Xbox. I don't know, my memory fades me, but either or. There were multiple space maps and they could do whatever they wanted. This is somewhat different from that. It's not the same thing, but it's still in the spirit of it. You can take down one Star Destroyer and you're heading towards the Death Star. So, now that you have Battlefront with the Death Star DLC, with the Bespin DLC, with the Outer Rim. So now you start out with 6 heroes when this game first came out. You have 2 for each that has came out since then. So you have a release around about, 3, 7, 9, 10, 11, at least about a good amount of 11 heroes or so. Almost a dozen. I'll say it that way because I can't remember it that well. Almost a dozen heroes in this game. So the heroes have been doubled. You have more maps. When this game started out, you had Endor, Tatooine, and I think that was about, and Sullust. You have 3 planets which you were working with. Now, if you had the season pass, you have Jakku, which was a free DLC. You have the Death Star. You have Bespin. You have Scarif, which is coming in December of this year. So you're looking at a Battlefront game, as I mentioned earlier, that has to be looked at from my point of view, and my honest point of view. I think this has to be looked at as a different game. I'm not saying that the game should get a pass for its previous sins, but what I'm saying is that you have to now retroactively look at this game and judge it on its content now, as opposed to its incomplete state when it released in November, because they're 2 different games. A lot of people ask, like, how can you judge that the game is different on those bases? Well, it's very simple. When I did my first video on Battlefront, it was basically the game in its original state. You didn't have space battles, you didn't have offline mode, you didn't have more heroes, you didn't even know, I mean, it was speculated, but the fact that DICE came out and said that the modes themselves were rushed, that they had a single player mode that was ready to be released, but they had to release it in time for Force Awakens. So you have a game now that is somewhat molded due to the backlash from the fan base, which is why the Death Star DLC is so impressive. The fan base was listened to for this Death Star DLC. This isn't just a mindless ramble here. These are the facts. The Death Star DLC, as well as the Bespin DLC, is prime examples used to show that DICE is in the healing process with the fan base here. That is still not over with yet. There's still a long road to go. But this is pretty much where we're at. And it's better now than what it was back in November. Fans stood up there and said that they wanted space battles. They demanded it. And DICE did their best to implement it in the system in which they already had and made it work. I will say, though, that it's far from perfect, but it's entertaining. It's fun. To me, I feel like the DLC is fun. The ability to play as R2-D2, the ability to have the Alderaan style garb get up that they had in A New Hope. The fact that they even listened to the fan base who complained about, the dirty uniforms, the dirty armor, that stormtrooper armor that they had, how they demanded it and asked if it could be clean for the Death Star. Shiny white uniforms. Now, aesthetically, some gamers don't really care about that. But in the grand scheme of things, the example of them listening is more important, I feel, than the actual result, because it's telling you that they're listening to you. And at the end of the day, that's all what you want from a gaming company. If a gaming company has the ability to listen to you, and they have the ability to try to apply not everything, but the majority of what will make the game enjoyable, then you have a win-win situation. So while others may argue about the fact that, yeah, Battlefront had skimped on the content, the DLC heroes are often debatable, you can't argue the fact that they didn't at least put the effort into trying to meet the fans halfway to change this game. Now, if you follow my videos from time to time, I've honestly have progressed. My opinion has progressed on Battlefront, and I said it would. I honestly hold to my word. I said if I see an ounce of effort from them, if I see that they're listening to the fan base and willing to meet them halfway, I'll change my opinion of the game. And I'll be honest with you, I feel like this game now is different and it's fun. There's something fun about the Death Star DLC. It feels like a Star Wars game now. The fact that you just implemented space into this game feels fun. It feels like Star Wars. It feels like you can take the option to either play on land, play on air, or play in space. That's all the fans wanted. Now, going forward in this game, you have one more DLC for this year. You have the Rogue One Scarif. Battlefront, from the looks of it, is going to be a title that's going to cover at least 2 movies per year. Now, this is just my guess. This is my assumption. I made it before in the first stream, and I'll say it here. I feel like this game is going to be covered from The Force Awakens to Rogue One. And the difference between the two is that you're going to have a full game once all this DLC is downloaded. If they plan to add more skins, if they plan to add more maps, you're going to have something that's entirely different from its previous release. So it's going to take about a year for this first one for you to finally sit down and put this game in a console and say, I can play on the Death Star. I can get kind of a sneak peek as to what is in Rogue One. I'm going to be playing in Scarif. I'm going to be playing on Jakku. I'm going to be playing on Bespin. It's going to cover the whole entire original trilogy era. Whereas originally, when fans got this game, they thought it was just going to cover The Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, and Return of the Jedi. Another thing that's very good about this DLC, aside from the fact that they're working, very close with Disney and with Lucasfilms and all the canon to make sure everything's good, is that you're starting to see a lot of stuff that is in Legends be implemented in canon. The new rifles that you have, the new blaster pistols, I forgot the names of them, but they were once canon. The blaster pistol was the DLC for the Death Star was in the Jedi Knight series. Kyle Katarn had it, and now it's canon. You had the TIE Defenders, which for a while was Legends until it showed up in a Star Wars phone app game, and now it's officially canon because it's in the Death Star DLC. So you're not able to play as the TIE Defender. You're not able to play as the B-Wing or Y-Wing, which I think is a bummer. It's one of the only remaining things that I have against this game is the fact that Battlefront, for the most part, it feels like sometimes that you're a kid in a playground having your hand held by your parent, where it's telling you, you got to go here. This is the objective that you have to do. This is the practical use for the B-Wing. This is it for the A-Wing. We don't want you to do this. We don't want you to just, here's your assignments. You have the X-Wing, you have this, you have that. I wish for future Battlefront titles that they would open it up. Open it up. And, and let us wreak havoc. That's where it needs to go. I would love to play as a TIE Defender. I would love to play as the B-Wing. The fact that there's more ships in this game is fun with the DLC, but I feel like they should just let it open. They should just run wild with it. You have all these toys, but you can't play with them. I think that's the one thing that's the problem with this game. But other than that, the fan community, I think that, as I've said in many videos, and I'll say it in this one, I think DICE had a baptism by fire type of situation, and they had to be thrown through the rung with the fan base in order to get back to where this game needs to be, so that when Battlefront 2 comes out, I'm not going to say a perfect game, but it's going to be a game where you have a company that fully understands where the fan base is, where their opinions are, and where they want it to be, and what they want out of it. At the end of the day, that's all what you can ask for. At the end of the day, that's all I want. I want to know that DICE is listening to me. And while they can't implement everything, because it's not possible, they also have their set schedule too. But it's nice to know that they're still listening and they're going to follow you. I mean, look at the patches and updates for this game. If you check the patches and updates, it's like, what was the most annoying thing in this game aesthetically? Was the fact that stormtroopers didn't have helmets. Yeah, they didn't have helmets on. So you're looking at stormtroopers running around without helmets. And DICE listened to the community. They changed it out. They altered it. And now you have stormtroopers with helmets. And they gave you more skins, more customization options. They gave you a chance to, if you want an Imperial officer, if you want an X-Wing pilot skin, you want that, you got it. It's in the game. So, my last thoughts on this is as follows. This DLC is good. I feel like they can implement it in other modes as well. I feel like Battle Station could be, instead of the Death Star, for some maps, you could have it where it's like a Super Star Destroyer and you have to get past the other Star Destroyers to blow that one up or something. Maybe above Bespin or something like that. I don't think it has to be just limited to one thing. I hope they release more maps. Maybe they release some for the Death Star too. But the game, as it is right now, is finally semi-complete. And you're going to feel a little bit more excitement playing this game. You're going to feel a little bit more bang for your buck now that the fact that they've done that. I think that's all that matters. Now that they've listened, you finally have the results. And that's all what fans have been asking for.